Why do you want to watch this episode? It is a really phenomenal question for somebody who's been in business for a number of decades and is asking specifically because she is changing the actual makeup of who her customer audience is. How does she establish credibility? And she's done so many amazing things. So I'm going to take a look at what's there and what's great. And then I'm going to share other things that make sense to do. So here's a question. My specialty, and I'm going to try to not read the words so you can't figure out. My specialty is been in business for over 30 years, focusing on companies which are less than 100 million in revenue. I've made a commitment to shift the business to those companies which are between 100 million and a billion. I have a book coming out in a couple months. How do I gain credibility with those execs who want to hire me? And love this question. Really pretty amazing. First, let me go back to the LinkedIn profile. And once again, I'm talking generically. I don't want to point out any particular names, but this is relevant for you. What happens when you first get to the profile? Overall, the profile is really good. There's lots of great elements here. There's some things that I really, really love. And there's a couple of things that I'll have to tell you at first blush. The one thing it really does, it forces me to dive in to learn more. I don't see that customer point of pain you serve. And when I first look at it, all I see is your title. So your title and what you do. I'd love to see who you serve and the pain point you address, both in the picture that's behind you, good picture of you, but the picture that's behind you, and also in the tagline that you have. When I then go to the bottom of your LinkedIn profile, what I'd like to see is those three things that you get endorsements for. I like to see those be very specifically focused on the audience you're going after. And I'd like to see them all be 99 plus. And generally speaking, I like to see at least 15 recommendations that you've given and received. When I do dive in a little bit more, I love what I see. So this is somebody who's used images and videos well. And one of the things you do is you point to an area where it looks like a podcast where you're showing episodes of things where you're talking about particular areas. Now, it may not be a podcast. It may be just things you've sat down and talked about. And your camera presence, speaking of which, I'm going to take this off. Overall, your camera presence is good. The sound is good. The quality is good. And what happens, it's all mostly you talking at the screen, right? And none of that's bad in terms of establishing credibility. Having a book is great in terms of establishing credibility. And now the question is, how do you reach the audience you want to reach? Let me give you 2 tips that are the most relevant you can have. Create a podcast that focuses on this audience and invite your prospects to talk to you about topics that are relevant. And this should be all giving, all stuff that you deliver. The quality of what you do, who you are, how you show up in the world, it should be very easy for you to reach out and for people to want to see you. And you just want to do an interactive discussion where you're bringing out the best and interesting opportunities. You have to brainstorm what the podcast is about, what you're focusing on, or whether it's a VCast. And at the end of the day, you want to use the opportunity to showcase those people on your show as a great way for them to get to know, like, and trust you first. And then later you do the follow-up. So they get to know, like, and trust you because you've invited them onto your show. You've established credibility. You've accomplished your goal. Then you follow through with what's next. The second thing, you have a book coming out. It's coming out in a couple months. The best thing you could possibly do right now is identify 100 or 150 prospects. Know them by name, know their physical address, start creating USPS or FedEx, and for your example, FedEx envelopes. Write a personal note inside the envelope to the specific person that you're addressing. sign the copy of the book that you send when the books come into you. Once it's published and the publisher sends you the book, then sign the book. And before you stuff it in, there'll be one more thing I'd suggest. Have a little sticky tab or something to a particular chapter or section that's relevant to the firm that you're addressing. Now, if doing this 100, 150 times seems like a lot, do it 20. It doesn't matter what it is. What will happen is the best thing. It's really hard when somebody gets a book to not open up the package. Now, what I get a lot is people who say to me, Mitchell, I am so interested in you and what you do, and I want to be featured on your show. Can I please send you a book? And they send me a book and it's not signed. Or they send me the book and it's assigned, but it's their standard stuff. And there's no other note in there, right? There's nothing to tell me or remind me how important I should be in relation to how they tell me they are when they're talking to me. Just so you know, that seems a little dubious. If somebody is that important that they're going to send me a book, don't you think they should take the extra 10 seconds to do something personal? So do something personal. Now, in particular, if you've identified a certain class of prospect you want to go after, where your skill set matches very well, and there's a particular chapter of your book that relates to it, well, put that into that handwritten note. Make sure you put a sticky pad, like I said, that points to that particular section so they see it. And then somewhere on the note or somewhere afterwards, hey, let's schedule time. I'll give you a call in a week or two, or feel free to go to this place or have your admin give me a call to set up time on the calendar. Let's chat. And there is nothing more powerful in terms of you establishing credibility for yourself. So stepping back, bigger picture, how do you show up when people go to your website? How do you show up when people go to whatever social media platform is relevant for you? In this particular case, LinkedIn is the platform. Do you make it easy for people to see without doing anything in the first 10, 15 seconds that you're credible? In this case, you need a little bit of work. If they're going to spend time digging in and learning more, in this case, you did great, right? So how do you make it easy for people to see you and see that you've got the credibility, that it is worthy of you having yet that one more conversation? Absolutely something that would be relevant. As a matter of fact, in your case, what could even be easier or something that would be fun is creating QR codes that point to the particular segments where you've talked about something and you already have something there. Maybe you've done that in your book, which would be great if you've been able to do that. And you could point specifically to the place where you're adding value to that content and it's already on your site, or already referenced via LinkedIn then to your site or to a location. And I think that's really it. So we want to think about how do you establish credibility in an audience that is slightly different than what you've served, but the same amount of learning, growing that you've done in the past still works here. Well, that's really easy to do. And what it is you take and show what you've done in the past, and then you say how it's applicable to the client, and you make it as easy as possible to get past that first 15, 20 seconds. And then when they go and do a little bit of exploring, you help them figure out where they need to explore. And you quickly, as soon as you can, get to some opportunity where you get to interact with them synchronously. So first, beef up the asynchronous communication, then figure out how you can get into a synchronous conversation, whether that's the podcast that you've invited them on, or whether or not that's some form of call to get to know each other. After watching this episode, a couple things should come to mind. How do you show up asynchronously? So when people see you and they've got 15 seconds to make a judgment about you, or 5 seconds to make a judgment about you, what do they see? Does it reinforce who you are and who you serve and the pain point you address? And if it doesn't, you need to do that. The next thing to think about is how when it's appropriate, when the business that you're doing is big enough that it's worthwhile to make and have those phone conversations, mostly consultants, speakers, trainers. How can you get to the point where you're having that synchronous communication with them? So think about it that way. Do you show up asynchronously where people want to then get to the next level? Once they get to the next level, of course, you got to figure out how to do that well. But that's really the thing you want to be thinking about. Hopefully you find that useful. Please share your likes, dislikes. Just do the likes, please. Give some more questions. Share your comments. Look forward to seeing you at the next episode of Dear Credibility Expert. Bye now.